Here's a guy who doesn't know how science works.
Let's start with science. Science is entirely fact. Science is data and results, but that's it.
No. Science is a method that involves collecting data and results, but a reason why scientists collect data and results is to test hypotheses. Hypotheses and theories are arguably the most important part of science. The whole point of science is to come up with ways to account for data and test results. Science is more than just recording observations.
Don't get me wrong, science is an incredibly important tool, and it basically takes place in almost every kind of study that we do today. We've gotten so far as a human race because of science. History, biology, sociology, even sports today have science involved in them. My goal here isn't to devalue science in any way, shape, or form, but I do want to be realistic about what science is capable of. I certainly don't want you to believe that it's capable of more than it actually is. Science can't produce ideas.
The whole point of science is to produce and test ideas.
It only is fact and data.
And hypotheses and theories.
Now, scientists, they observe data and then they interpret it based on the facts that they see in front of them.
Yes, that's called doing science.
And nobody considers scientists to be infallible. Even the most hardline atheists are completely open to the idea that, yeah, scientists are human, they make mistakes, and there are a lot of things that we don't know. But they're certainly not infallible. Everybody's in agreement. Obviously, interpretations have to happen for us to get anywhere, but everybody's in agreement that it's coming from a source that is imperfect.
But again, the whole point of science is to filter out as many flawed ideas as possible. Those that reach a point of consensus are the ones that most consistently match and most parsimoniously account for the data and observations. They are not necessarily true, but they are the closest we know how to get to the truth.
And there's really nothing about science exclusively that makes people that study science better at interpreting data than everybody else is.
Scientists are trained to question their own biases and the biases of everyone else. They probably can't completely eliminate them, and biases of course still creep into the work, but is it all that unreasonable to infer that an epistemic paradigm which focuses on questioning biases would probably produce less biased ideas than paradigms that don't?
Now, recognizing ideas. Recognizing ideas as interpretive theories that scientists come up with is crucially important if we're trying to approach ideas while exercising critical thinking. And that's because there are typically more than one interpretive theory that exists about any given topic. There is definitely more interpretive theories about any huge scientific claim.
Sure, but they don't all account for the data with equal consistency, nor are they all equally parsimonious, which means that they are not all equally likely to be accurate.
You need to be able to look at different interpretive theories and evaluate them based on the worldview that they're coming from.
No, that's a genetic fallacy. If you want to evaluate ideas based on how close they get to accurately portraying the world we live in, you should look at whether those theories match observation, and how simply they account for the phenomena we observe. If an idea matches the data more consistently than any other, and is simpler than any other, it is more likely to be accurate. Where the idea comes from is totally irrelevant. If it turned out that Einstein came up with relativity by dropping acid and hallucinating that a ferret described it to him, or by reading tea leaves or playing with a Ouija board, that would be irrelevant because it nonetheless accounts for a vast amount of data more consistently and simply than any other theory can account for those data.
Put yourself in the shoes of different worldviews, and then think to yourself, would I accept that interpretive theory as true? Now, the scholarly side of Christians, as much as critics will tell you that they do ignore science, they don't.
No, they don't ignore it. They perform all kinds of hermeneutic gymnastics trying to make it fit into their worldview. They start with the assumption that their worldview is correct and try to make the data fit, rather than trying to make their worldview fit with the data. A lot of apologists, including this guy I suspect, think that scientists are doing the same thing. They believe that scientists start by presupposing atheism or presupposing materialism or naturalism, and then try to explain their data in a way that is consistent with those perspectives. This is not the case. If they are competent scientists, they build their worldviews from the data up.
Scientists that hold close to the Christian worldview, they don't ignore science, they just have different interpretive theories about what the evidence in front of us means.
Yes, they often have worse interpretive theories. They have interpretive theories that are either contradicted by some data or give unnecessarily complicated explanations for those data.
For example, Evolutionists have the concept of the tree of life, the idea that life stemmed from one place. Creationists instead take a different approach to where we have what's called the orchard of creation, where they believe that different animals just diversified after Noah's flood.
Which is neither the simplest explanation, nor is it an explanation consistent with all of the data. Evolution is more consistent with the fact that we don't see a genetic bottleneck. It's more consistent with the fact that radiometric data consistently shows things to be older than the book of Genesis implies they are. It's more consistent with the fact that there is no evidence of cultural disruption at the time the flood supposedly occurred. Now I know Ken Ham and lots of other creationists have come up with all kinds of complicated ways to make this all fit with their biblical presuppositions, but applying Occam's razor leaves us with theories that are just more probably true.
Or let's take the Big Bang Theory, for example. The concept of the Big Bang Theory, which Christians denied for a very long time.
Young Earth creationists probably did, but old Earth creationists actually inferred that it corroborated the biblical account.
A lot of Christians are starting to accept the Big Bang Theory. Everybody's pretty much in agreement that after the Big Bang Theory, after the events that took place, there was sound waves that was emitting themselves around the universe.
Electromagnetic waves, not sound waves.
The difference is, creationists believe that those sound waves that were coming out from the Big Bang were actually the very thing that created the Big Bang in the first place, when God spoke the universe into being.
I've never heard any Christian make this argument before, probably because even many apologists will understand that it makes no sense whatsoever. Sound waves are movements of matter particles. How could matter particles be moving before matter even existed? How could anything be moving before space ever existed?
Okay, if we're honestly trying to pursue critical thinking, then we have to be able to separate science and interpretive theories. That way we can evaluate the two independently.
You can't separate interpretive theories from science because the whole point of science is to evaluate interpretive theories. That's what science is.
Usually they're both based on the same evidence that we have in front of us.
Creationist ideas are based on the Bible first and foremost and place data in a position of secondary relevance at best. Scientific ideas, by definition, are based on the evidence first. Thanks again for helping me out on Patreon.